It's day whatever of lockdown here in France, and all I can tell you is I haven't been out the gate for a month now, which is pretty crazy, really. I've lived in these four walls and my little garden all this time, not been anywhere, not even to the shop. I mean, what is that all about? Anyway, I've been doing this thing about work and what have you, work stories, and although my job mainly was being out on the road, rapping and having a good time and enjoying myself, I needed to earn more money to continue doing my sports, motor racing and what have you, and motorbikes and cars and everything else. So I was forever doing extra jobs and working for other businesses, which will come to another time. But this one particular story revolves my mate Paul, Ginger Paul, and his dad run the car park at Trafalgar Square, and it's a big underground car park. It's massive, great big thing, and his dad was the big boss. So Paul said to me one day, he said, yeah, New Year's Eve, how'd you fancy earning yourself a nice little wedge being security up at Trafalgar Square? I said, yeah, of course. I've got to tell you, at this point, as far as fighting goes, I'm not that good. I usually tended to always end up as the runner-up. But hey, that's the way life is. So anyway, we gets up. I can't remember what the shift time was, but we got up to the car park and we did the rounds in this little white van we had. And me and Paul owned this white van, and the weirdest thing is, neither of us can ever remember actually buying it, and neither of us can ever remember selling it, but we had this van for quite a time. Anyway, a little while before, I'd taken the back doors of this little minivan off, and because it was rusty down the bottom, and I'd put some fiberglass in and filled and resprayed it, put it back on the van, and I was talking to Paul. I said, look, the van, it looks okay, but we're going to have to get some new doors at some point, because these are pretty rotten. Anyway, we're down to the bottom. We got to the bottom of the car park, and there's this white minivan, and it's exactly the same as ours. So we kind of looked at each other and thought, well, I don't know. So we picked the lock of the van, and we swapped the doors over. Nobody would know their wiser, and we had this lovely set of doors, and the guy, honestly, he wouldn't have noticed because I'd sprayed it all and it looked good. Although in a few weeks' time, the rust would have come through and he would have thought, wonder why that happened. Anyway, that was a bit naughty. Anyway, later on, it got a bit rough and what have you, and there was some bit of fighting going on, and then the toilet where Trafalgar Square is, literally a few yards away from Trafalgar Square, is this car park. Yeah, so. A lot of people coming from Trafalgar Square. It's getting about 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 11 o'clock, I'd say. And it was getting busier and busier, and people going into the car park's toilets, and the blokes had overflowed everywhere. It was a complete mess. Anyway, and the ladies was not as bad, but we decided we'd lock them up. So we locked them up, and people were a bit pissed off with us about it at this time. But never mind. Anyway, it was about 1:45, and there was still people, loads of people hanging about. And this cop arrives, or three of them, in fact, and one of them, he had all the epaulets, he had all the gold braids and the posh hat, and, he was obviously the big top guy. And he come up to me and he said, can you open the toilets, please? I said, well, the blokes is flooded, so no. He said, well, I'll use what about the ladies? I said, well, yeah, that's okay. And, I'm fair enough, no problem. So I went with him and I unlocked it. And then he made a fatal error because I wouldn't, no problem. And he said, whatever you do, don't let anybody in while I'm in there. Oh, all right. Ping. Yeah, no. So I went back over to my mate Paul and I said, this big cop with the epaulets and the braiding and all this and the posh hat just told me, whatever you do, don't let anybody else in there. And he said, oh dear. So we shouted in unison, girls, the toilets are back open, to which all these girls flooded in there. I mean, you never seen anything like it. I mean, we're giving it time for this cop to get his trousers down and do the business. Anyway, it's about a minute later, there's all these screams as the girls found a bloke in their toilet. He came out, and I'm not kidding, I've never seen anybody look so angry in all my life. And I said to my mate Paul, I said, we're going to pay for this because he's not happy. So the best thing we can do is hide. So, and there was the two cops that were with him. They were looking at us as if to say, you complete bastards, because he's going to be a real arsehole for the rest of the night because of this. Anyway, so we went and hid for a while, kept out of his way. Anyway, it got past midnight and it was getting a bit quieter, where we were. So he said, well, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll nip over to the square because that's where it's all happening. And so we went to Trafalgar Square, and it's about 10 past midnight, and there was this fight going on. I mean, this fight was the most epic fight I've ever seen. There was blood and guts everywhere, and there was, it was like this biggest mass brawl you've ever seen in your life. There was thousands of people fighting, and me and Paul said, well, I think we'll sort of sneak back to the car park then. So anyway, we got going back to the car park. And I thought, there's this one guy, a few guys got hold of one guy and threw him over the railings down into the cellar of this house. And I thought, oh, that's a long drop. Anyway, they pissed off. So I went over and leant over and I said, you all right, mate? And the bloke, yeah, I'm all right. So, all right, okay, then there you go. So he goes back. And then about 1 o'clock, a lot of people started drifting back, and it was getting rougher and rougher, and we thought, bloody hell. So Paul made the call, and they delivered the guard dogs to us. So we had some security there. And so we had these dogs, and the dogs didn't know me, but they knew Paul, right? Anyway, so they kept away from us. There was a lot of fighting and shit and people swearing at us, and but they kept away because I think the dogs were mean. Anyway, it must have been about, I don't know, 2:30 in the morning. A lot of people had really gone, so called up the dog people and they come and pick the dogs up. That was the thing, Anyway, at one point I was sort of I was out in the middle of nowhere on my own in the car park. God knows what I was doing. And my mate Paul, he had the dogs, all of them. And he said, here, Nick, how fast can you run? I said, I don't know, why? He said, well, we're going to find out. And he released the dogs on me. I thought, you complete bastard. And I run towards the van and I'm flat out, I'm running. And luckily, because we didn't have the key to open the van, and it was unlocked, so I got in the back of the van, slammed the door from the inside, and his dogs, only seconds later, like a James Bond film it was, going up the windows, and there's my mate Paul. He's pissing himself. He's like, oh, he's had the best night ever. Anyway, people come and took the dogs and off we went, and it must have been about 4 o'clock in the morning, and we drove through the East End of London, and Paul said, he said, I know we'll get a good fry up. And so there we are, 4 o'clock New Year's Day, enjoying a nice fried breakfast, chatting about the night, and Paul doled out the money I got for the night, and I thought, that was one hell of a night's work, and but what a pay packet. Till next time, my friends, stay safe. Stay indoors and don't catch this shit. See you guys.